This is the first recording about my discoveries into the legend of the Bowie Goat Man. If you're listening to this, it means you're here to help me solve what's become an ongoing mystery, and I thank you for being brave enough to do this. I have arranged for others to join us tonight in putting a stop to whatever this is. But first, I want to share with you everything I know. To start, I want to explain how I came to be involved in all of this. Well, research into local legend, myth, and the paranormal. You see a lot in the DC area, but I never thought I'd be dealing with something like this. I found this house on an online auction, but buyers beware, right? I soon discovered that it was historically one of the most famous homes in the area, that of the Bowie family. I also soon discovered that there was something a little off, something a little strange about the house and grounds. The property itself dates back to the 1700s and was given to the family by distant relative John Smith. These are ancient lands though, old earth, and I believe there is an energy here that can be felt and seen in the shadows. In doing projects around the house, there always seems to be a watchful eye, but that seems normal with older homes. But stranger still have been the screams coming from the woods at night. At first they were distant. I could barely hear them amidst the sound of trains passing in the night, wind blowing the leaves, but as the weeks went on, they grew louder and closer, from the farm past the house, to the terraces in the backyard, to the back porch, and then what seemed to be coming from inside the house itself, right underneath me. Inhuman screams of torture and anger, pain and pleasure. Even stranger, as the sounds got closer, the mansion became more active. Things would move. I could see unnatural shapes in the dark and feel hot and cold chills just as passing through rooms. I fear something is being gathered and cultivated in the house. Maybe something evil. The early tribes of the Piscataway of these lands speak of worshiping a shape-shifting spirit described as a monstrous-looking devil who roamed the dense forests. They called him Oki. Well, perhaps Oki is back, or at least here for now. That's why I recently moved out into the garage. I felt threatened in the house. It seems as I was just in the way of something else going on, something bigger. Although I feel safer, I still hear the noises at night, coming from inside the house, of something working feverishly through the witching hours. There have been a great number of other accounts of what the beast might be, and tonight, together, hopefully we'll get to the bottom of this. But in order for you to help me, I think we should retrace some of the Goat Man's infamous stomping grounds. Then maybe we can see his connection here and what he wants with this place. Or, I fear, what he wants with us.
Children, have you ever met the bogeyman before? No, of course you haven't, for you're much too good, I'm sure. Don't you be afraid of him if he should visit you. He's a great big coward, so I'll tell you what to do. Hush, 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 here comes the bogeyman. Don't let him come too close to you, he'll catch you if he can. Just pretend that you're a crocodile, and you will find that bogeyman will run away a mile. Say shoo shoo and stick him with a pin. Bogeyman will very nearly jump out of his skin. Say buzz buzz, just like the wasp that stings. Bogeyman will think you are an elephant with wings. Hush, 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 here comes the bogeyman. Tell him you've got soldiers in your bed, for he will never guess.
Ah, the graveyard, a place of peace, silence. Or is it? Are we truly gone after we've left the physical state? Perhaps the story that most people in the Bowie area attribute as being the true story of the Goat Man's origin dates back to the 1950s. This is the story of Stephen Fletcher and his childhood sweetheart and wife, Jenny. Fletcher was a researcher in the nearby Beltsville Agricultural Research Center, or BARC as it was more commonly known. The 6,600 acres of government farmland not far from here was set up in 1910 and was originally known as the Experiment Farm of Dairy and Animal Husbandry Division of Livestock. This was the perfect place to hide secrets, DC's own Area 51 in the woods. It was rumored that atrocious experimentations happened there as the government underwent early genetics testing, which takes us back to Stephen Fletcher. Fletcher's young and happy marriage of only 2 years was suddenly interrupted when his wife, Jenny, fell ill and slipped into a coma. Though Fletcher had contacts with professionals and doctors with Johns Hopkins, no one could help or figure out how to bring Jenny out of the coma. With nowhere left to turn and time of the essence, Fletcher looked to his own lab where he began experiments with his assistant, William Lotsford. Because it was what was most readily available, he turned to goat DNA as his prime resource. Some say this is where things went wrong. In trying to combine the goat and human DNA, something happened. As the story goes, either Fletcher created a mutation so horrible that it could be nothing but evil, or, mistakenly, he transformed himself into half man, half goat, but with no exact percentages. It's said this creature became untamable and escaped from the laboratory into the abandoned BARC farmlands. Upon his exodus, he also took with him a blade, an axe, and it's said that he roams these woods around you, vengefully, to this very day. It was supposedly after this that the sightings in the area began, people disappearing into the woods, dogs and livestock being killed. The series of tragedy caused an outcry and warranted so much attention about the activities of BARC, the USDA had to release an official statement regarding the matter and denying knowledge or any involvement. Of this murderous beast, some say a demon, a hybrid, or as others say, a trapped soul. I still don't know what drew him here or what his purpose is, but I have my suspicions, as you may as well soon. As a team, I think it's best that we venture deeper into the brush and perhaps get some more background on the sightings there. Perhaps this is one of the famous ghost cars of the area. Governor's Bridge, some 13 miles from here, lies deep in the brambles of Forgotten Bowie. Here in the shifting shapes of vines and old growth, the bridge built in the 1800s still looms. This bridge makes the cross over the Patuxent River and joins Prince George's County to Anne Arundel. This sentinel has served many travelers well. Perhaps its fortitude, its power, shrouded in the trees like a secret kept deep in the mind, is why most have come to believe that this location is one of the Goatman's prime haunts. In my recent visits there, it felt similar to what I've experienced at the house, something not too distant, watching ever so carefully. Locals and legend seekers alike will tell those who dare to visit the bridge to stick to their route. It's said that should one stop on the bridge and be brave or dumb enough to turn off the car and step out onto it, that the goat man himself appears with the axe in hand to lay his final blow. Why he's so protective of this space is unknown, but many consider this to be his place of respite to the rage he has inside. Others also know this bridge by another name, Crybaby Bridge. Reportedly, a young woman who had had a child secretly and wished to remain undiscovered decided to throw this baby over the bridge. After following through with her plan and turning to leave, her soul wrenched inside by what she'd done. She couldn't take another step. She turned, facing the darkness, her own darkness, and then off the bridge she threw herself as well. On the full moon, some have not only heard the sounds of the baby crying and screams in the night, but claim to have seen the body of the child floating in the water. Whatever the sounds may be, those shrieks in the night, many don't know whether to mark them as that of the murdered child or of the goat man. It seems that in general, the goat man is drawn to vehicles. Not far from Governor's Bridge is Fletchertown Road, a famous lover's lane of the area. Teenagers in the area are warned not to go parking anywhere near the woods, as something of a hookman urban legend encircles their fate. As it goes, one of the lovers hears something and steps out from the car, from the embrace of their loved one. After minutes pass by with no return and no response, the partner waits with bated breath and growing anxiety in the car. But then soon they begin to hear a steady tap on the roof of the car. Fearfully they wait, listening to the droning sound for hours and hours, until finally they doze off with exhaustion. In the morning's light, they're finally brave enough to venture out from the car, but are greeted with a ghastly sight. Their loved one dead and bleeding out hung above the car in the trees above. The first documented case of goatman in automobiles dates back to 1957 and tells of a couple driving down Zug Road who suddenly saw something run out of the woods. Then it stopped and began to watch them from afar. They pulled over to get a better look, but it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. These stories prove that truly there is no safe space in these woods.
The doors all squeak and the windows creak and the ceilings leak 'cause the roof's antique and you hear a shriek and your legs feel weak. It's the haunted house. There's a dismal moan like a weird trombone and the old ham bone is suddenly thrown. You are all alone with the great unknown in the haunted house. There's only one good spirit, it's the spirit in the bottle. With shaking hands you pull the cork and pour some down your throttle. There's a clank of chains and the smell of drains and a gory stain where the Duke was slain. And you've got chilblains and varicose veins in the haunted house. From the old oak beam hangs a corpse you seem to feel a wet stream with a sinister gleam. And you wake with a scream from a horrible dream of the haunted house. When a cavalier with a dreadful leer tries to disappear through the chiffonier and you cling with fear to the chandelier, it's the haunted house. The air is full of clammy claws that clutch you by the collar. So gargle night and morning just in case you have to holler. There are lights and sprites and awful frights in flesh-pink tights, but at dead of night comes a woman in white, so you're quite all right in the haunted house. When the old church clock strikes 12, there's a knock with a sudden shock. You remember the lock on the door, there's a crock. Oh, why do you mock at the haunted house? It's as black as pitch and your eyeballs twitch in the darkest snitch. It's a dirty witch and the lighting switch is out of reach in the haunted house. When the slavey spills the gravy, why is she so pallid? Something pushed her in the pantry when she fetched the salad.
I'm filled with dread, yes, I'm nearly dead. I saw her head underneath my bed. Come out if you can, I could do with a man
in the haunted house.
Would you dare camp in the woods around here? I wouldn't recommend it. If what you've already heard to this point hasn't scared you, well, there's more for you to digest. Although there is no existing news article accounting for this, it's said that in 1962, a group of 14 hikers, 12 children and 2 adults, came across a cave in the woods nearby. At the time, this happened to be the dwelling of our transient creature. Being disturbed, he lunged from its hiding place in the cave. Frenzied, it said that the goat man took his axe to the group, ensnaring 12 of the hikers, but 2 managed to scramble out. They made it back to the closest town, rallied the police, and brought them back. But what they weren't prepared for was the horror they would encounter. All that remained of the victims were mangled and partially eaten limbs and entrails, with a path of blood smeared across the ground leading back to the cave's entrance. Perhaps one of the goriest encounters attributed to the goat man. These woods, what they don't hide: hysteria, experimentation, disease. In 1934, nearby Glendale Hospital opened its doors to the unwanted of D.C. At the time, fear gripped the region with tuberculosis outbreaks. Diagnosed and sometimes misdiagnosed, patients were shunned by families and doomed to accept their lives would soon be over. Glendale did not offer salvation, but it was oriented towards nature and sunlight, thought to help with ailing TB patients. But all was not well in this asylum. Injustice often comes to those too weak to resist it. It's said that some of the doctors on staff used patients as living medical experiments, performing unorthodox procedures such as force collapsing their lungs as a means of a cure. Hundreds suffered deaths in the care of Glendale. Some say that patients that had the strength to escape did, into these woods. Haggard and distressed from disease, there are some reports of these individuals with zombie-like figures, stealing food from crops or digging through rural residential trash. Others also claim that Glendale is one of the prime sighting areas for the Bowie Goat Man. Could this be true? Was he a part of those sinister deeds as well? For some reason, these woods teem with the unexplained, with beasts out for blood, one such being the snallygaster. This tentacled flying reptile is said to have a metallic beak with razor-sharp teeth. In German, its name translates to fast ghost, and that's what it truly is. It's said that the creature has an unending appetite and is not choosy in its feasting. Whether chickens, livestock, or small children, the raptor descends with a screech, snatching up prey with its talon-studded tentacles. Though reports of this primeval devil only began to surface in the early 1900s, attention and credibility grew so strong that the Smithsonian offered rewards for the creature, and Teddy Roosevelt organized a hunting party to capture it. But as soon as the legends began, they soon faded. But maybe the creature was obeying orders, perhaps lying in wait by something else that controlled it. It should also be noted that this area has its own fair sightings of Bigfoot, its own Loch Ness Monster of the Chesapeake, Chessie, and lesser known, the Hayote of Joppa, similar to the Chupacabra. And there are other unexplained creatures lurking in these woods. Tales of poltergeist, body-dumping roads, following eyes, the list goes on. It leads me to ask why so many of these curiosities here. Regardless, these woods are nothing to joke about, and certainly not a place to stray too far from your group. I'd like to expand your knowledge just a little bit more, then I'll meet you to begin our investigation.
When you are down with the blues, it means that the devil got into your shoes. You'll find them easy to lose, dancing the devil away. Just grin and don't let him in whenever he tries to get under your skin. Pick up your feet and begin dancing the devil away. That evil spirit is nothing but the voodoo. Just stamp your feet on the ground and shake your hoodoo. Now that you know how it's done, keep out of the shadows and stay in the sun. Come on and join in the fun, dancing the devil away.
I'm sure from where you are, you have a great view of the house at this point. Just looking at it gives me chills of the past few weeks. The unexplained sounds and sights, the screams coming from, well, everywhere, even the walls. Again, I'm very glad you're all here tonight to help me get to the bottom of these mysteries and see for yourself how this mansion has now become very active supernaturally. Now that we're so close to the investigation, I want to share with you the more recent sightings of Goatman and provide you with my rationale about how he got here. In 1963, a woman traveling near the Patuxent Wildlife Research Center said she saw something in the road that wouldn't move out of her way. She stopped, and it came towards her. It pounded on the hood and beat on her door, but finally left her alone and ran back into the woods. 1971, a man went out to feed his pigs, but instead he found a man-like creature hunched over eating one of them. It turned to him, stared down, and then crept into the woods. At this time in the area's history, most unexplained deaths soon became attributed to the Goatman. For instance, in 1972, a woman who was walking her dog in Greenbelt Park, the dog taking her off the trail followed a scent to a shiny object in the woods, which turned out to be a watch still attached to its dead owner. In March of 1980, a troop of Boy Scouts stumbled upon a dismembered person found on the banks of a small creek near Bowie. Another unexplained murder. In 1983, a couple went out to check on their German Shepherd, only to make a grisly discovery. The dog had been slaughtered, its head cut off from the rest of its body, and placed delicately in the lawn, facing back to the house. Some claim the Goatman is just a hermit. Others say a man with amputated feet that resemble hooves, while others stick to the original telling of Stephen Fletcher's mutated evolution. Regardless, all say that the Goatman hates canines. In the fall of 1971, at least 4 dogs were murdered in their yards, and only done for pleasure. That same year, perhaps the strongest evidence of Goatman's existence was derived from numerous shared accounts at a party hosted by April Edwards of Bowie. During this house party, all claimed to have witnessed a creature standing on a truck in the backyard. The thing, once detected, jumped off the truck, let out an ungodly scream, and disappeared into the woods. This encounter occurred on Zug Road, which we've previously discussed as an area that the Goatman was seen by a couple in their car, years before. But the sighting of the monster was not the end of this story. The terrified party members did not go back outside until the next morning. It was then that they realized that the Holmes dog Ginger was missing. April Edwards went out in search for the family pet, and walking across the street, finally found only the decapitated remains of the dog's head by the train tracks. Now I'd like to explain to you my theory. It wasn't until I heard this story that I started to put the pieces together. If you follow that railroad track south from where the head of Ginger the dog was found, you'll find that it runs no more than 200 yards from where you're standing now, just down the terraces in the woods there. I think for years the Goatman has been hopping on and off trains to make his rounds around Maryland. When he jumped off here, he discovered this to be one of the Bowie family homes. Bowie, his domain, his home. I think the Goatman is using this house now as a gathering place for something, and I feel like we may be the only ones that can stop it. I haven't been in the house for a few weeks now, but tonight, with your help, we're going in. I've hired a psychic and a local ghost investigation team to help. They should already be inside. I'll meet you here in a moment and we'll go in together.
Say hush, hush, he'll think that you're asleep. If you make a lovely snore away, he'll softly creep. Sing this tune, you children one and all. Bogeyman will run away, he'll think it's Henry Hall. When the shadows of the evening creep across the sky, and your mommy comes upstairs to sing a lullaby, tell her that the bogeyman no longer frightens you. Uncle Henry's very kindly told you what to do. Hush, 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 here comes the bogeyman. Don't let him come too close to you, he'll catch you if he can. Just pretend your teddy bear's a dog, then shout out, fetch him, Teddy, and he'll hop off like a frog.